right into the third session. It's going to be with Monica. And we're going to be focusing on buyers today. So the first session, wait, this is looking.
Are you doing okay, Ashley, with that lead?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I spoke to her already and I just sent her an email. So, yeah,
Okay, good. Good.
I'll work on that CMA tonight.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi, guys.
Hey, so the first session is buyer consultation, and Monica's gonna do a fabulous job in teaching you that.
She'll
Want to
With
go
that,
over any,
I-
did we want to go over homework or anything like that from last week or?
we're a little behind already, so we're gonna save that for later on.
Okay, that's totally fine. No problem. Let me go ahead and just share my screen here. Let's try again. Okay. I'm going to share this slide. Okay, so you guys can see the slides right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. Give me 1 second here. Let me just prep my screen a little. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're going to be talking about working with buyers, but primarily one of the most important things to know is how to do a buyer presentation. This is something that I think that, realistically, it's not talked about in the books. It's not, you're not prepped on exactly how to do this when you're learning how to become a real estate agent before you get your license. But it's a crucial part of working with that type of client, just like it's crucially important to have listing presentation when you're talking to a seller. And that's why I think it's really important for you to get a feel for what that looks like and how to do one. So what we're going to cover today is why the buyer presentations are mandatory. You got to do it with every single potential buyer that you are going to work with. How to set up a successful consultation, what to do before, during, and after, how to show your unique value, and setting proper expectations with your buyers. There'll be some talking points in there too to help you navigate throughout the consultation. And I highly recommend if you can ever sit in on one, even if it's not yours, and you can just be a fly on the wall and be like, we're here together as a team, go and see one. Go watch one, see as many as you can to get a feel for what that's like in person. Now, let me share some industry data that shows you why buyer presentations matter, probably more than ever at this point. 88% of buyers do use a real estate agent. So despite all the tools out there, Zillow, Redfin, all that stuff, and the majority of buyers understand that they need professional guidance, right? That they want that. Your job is really just to be the one that they choose, be the one that they're going to end up working with. 90%, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. What did I do? I made it smaller.
We can still see it.
You could still see
No,
it.
it looks fine.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
normal to us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry about that then. Okay. Let me, oh my gosh, what did I do? Okay. I'm glad you saw it. I thought maybe I went to the wrong slide. My bad. 90% would use their own agent again or recommend them. That's a really high number. That means that when you do a good job and they're extremely satisfied, this is where your future business is going to come from. This is where referrals and repeat clients come in. So a great buyer presentation, I believe, sets the stage for earning that recommendation. It's an important step. And about 71% interviewed at least one agent before choosing. That's also a pretty big number, which means you're not the only agent they're probably talking to. And the buyer presentation is kind of your interview, really, at the end of the day. This is where you prove I'm the best choice. Use me. And while first impression matters a lot, so you can get a vibe with a person and click with them, giving them value and substance matters even more. And this is where you do that. This is where you start to do that and you show them why you're the one for the job. Um, Finally, 43% found their agent through word of mouth. In other words, from somebody else, a referral, somebody told them, use this person. So that's still a really big number. And it's, I think at this point, still the biggest way that people find their agent is through a referral. Basically, at the end of the day, this presentation, it's an audition for your future referrals. So being professional in this first step and setting the stage right up front determines whether or not they're going to be talking about you to their friends and family. You you want to make sure that you do this well. Key takeaway is you want buyers, you want to show buyers that you are professional and what you're giving them right up front so that they are very clear on why they want to work with you and why they want to hire you. And the landscape's changed a little bit for how we work with buyers as far as our contracts. So it's even more crucial now that we do this upfront. Because before we used to be able to meet somebody off of like an online lead or something like that, meet them at a property, show them a house, and then maybe get into doing a buyer presentation and deciding they want to work with you and all of that. That's no longer the game. So now NAR rules require a signed agreement with your buyer before you even show property. And not just show property, but start talking real estate with them. If you're emailing them properties, even if you haven't gone to look at one, you are now acting as their agent and you better have a contract. California law requires that you have a written contract either at the time of making an offer or as soon as possible after that. But I think at this point, we really just need to follow CAR and NAR rules, which basically say have a contract before you start working with a buyer. And it's important because that's when you're going to explain to buyers your compensation, your services. It's going to be where you do that exchange of, hey, I'm doing this for you and you're paying me this for that. And how's that going to work exactly? So this is when you have that talk with them. And it's crucially important that they understand what they're buying and what they're paying for and how much it's going to cost. And if it's going to be them paying or somebody else, all of those details. And it's also a time for you to build trust with them and rapport before anybody commits to anything. At the end of the day, they're choosing you, but you get to choose them too. You might have a discussion with these buyers and realize, oh my God, these guys are all over the place. Their finances are weird at best. And I don't want to work with them. I don't want to work with them. You know what I mean? That you can choose to not work with people that have come to you. So this is a time when you're kind of interviewing each other as well as trying to get a client. And if you decide that maybe this is too much for you or not the right person for you to work with, you can always refer that or have somebody else come in and team up with you to make it a little bit easier. So keep that in the back of your head. Also, very important, and this is why it's in blue, you got to do one every time with every single buyer. I don't care if it's your mom, friends, family, neighbors, past clients. Yes, include them on doing this. Because one, it's a professional business meeting where you're sitting down and signing a contract. I would hope that if you ever do that with any other professional, that you have some sort of consultation and meeting before that. They don't just put a piece of paper in front of you and say, sign, please, right? You have a discussion about what you're going to work together on, even if you know each other and even if you've worked together in the past, because every time you work with them, it's going to be a little bit different, right? But it's especially important when it's friends and family. And I say that because you already have a personal relationship and that's how they know you. They might know you're a professional in real estate as well, but all they know and experience is the personal relationship they have with you. And you have to kind of set the stage of, well, here's what I can do for you professionally, and here's how that's going to work, alongside the fact that we're friends or that we're family. And it's really important to set those expectations because I think even more so when it's friends and family, boundaries can get blurred real easy. So it's really good idea to just make sure that everybody's on the same page up front. And also sometimes just to, clarify, what do you know? What do you don't know? What do you need more help with? How can I make this better for you? So some of the elements of a winning presentation that you want to keep in mind are making a genuine connection with your buyers, showing them why they need you and how you can help, the details specifically. Explaining the buyer process clearly, but not too in depth. You want to kind of get a feel for how much they know so you can fill in the blanks and don't give too much because that can be a little overwhelming during that first meeting. You want to pre-qualify them and gather some essential details about their needs and interests in the home that they're looking for, and discuss concerns, any questions they have. This is the time to do that. And you do all of this before you get to the agreement at the end. Them signing the agreement should be one of the last things you do. All of this should be handled before. And maybe you end that meeting with setting some expectations, setting up a timeline for what's going to happen next, giving them a clear idea of what's going on now, what's happening tomorrow, later today, what's going to happen for the next week, whatever. So kind of to start, think of how you set up for this buyer consultation, how you prep, right? You're going to want to pre-qualify this potential buyer using a buyer questionnaire. I have put a copy of the one I use in the drive. You guys can take a look at it. I'm gonna bring it up really, really quick. And can I do multiple sharing? What's going on here? Let me,
Unshare and then reshare.
okay, can you guys see the buyer questionnaire? Okay, so this would be a sheet that you can keep, or you can email to them and let them fill it out, right? You can either do this over the phone, maybe when you're talking to them, you can keep it with you. I would say do this before the consultation, before the buyer presentation, right? This is a step beforehand that you can gather some information from them, some basic details about what they're looking for, some basic information about their situation with financing, and they might not know the answers to these questions. That's totally okay. You're trying to figure out where they're at, right? Kind of how much they want to spend, what they think they have to spend, what do they want in their new home? What do they need in their new home? There's two different things, want and need, not the same thing. There's must-haves, and then there's I'd love it if it had that, right? You want to make the difference between that. You can go through the sheet and kind of fill out some notes for yourself, and then any other specific notes that you want to take. This is a very simple thing. You're not going to get too in depth, but you can want to get at least a little bit up front so that you know what to bring when you do the consultation. You know what things to bring them. You know what things to discuss. So I'm going to come back to the slides really quick. I don't know how to like switch over from one thing to another. So I'm just going to keep it here on the slides for you. Note any specific concerns that they mention, either about timing, money, location, financing, whatever they're most worried about. Note those. And then schedule an in-person meeting. Ideally at the office, or you can do it at their home. You can also do things like let's meet up at a local Starbucks or whatever. I don't recommend it. It's loud, it's distracting. It's best if you're in a quiet place. And also you want to make sure that you're going to have that meeting with all of the parties that are going to buy. So if it's a couple, have it with both of them. If it's, three people, have it with all of them. Don't have it with one and then assume they're going to take all that information back to the other party. Don't do that. Also because you need both of them to sign the buyer consultation, the buyer agreement form. And yes, Zoom is fine, I think, but I think that should be reserved for when they're so far away that it's just not feasible to do it in person. Ideally, you will always want to do it in person. That's when you can build the best rapport and connection. And it's so much easier to have that consult with them that way. Zoom's fine if you have to, but don't go there as a first just to make things easier. Best to actually meet them in person.
Monica, may I add, you made a good point. Personally, with buyers, I wouldn't meet them at their house because, with sellers you would because you want to see their
Yeah.
house, right? But with buyers, I tend to meet them for safety purposes, at the office or somewhere, like Monica said, somewhere else, because, you'll get buyers that, you don't necessarily have those safety measures in
Sure.
place. So I would be careful with that.
That's smart.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I'm like if you know the people, then it's
Right.
probably fine, like if it's a neighbor, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
yeah, case by case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, and this is why I said, why in-person matters. People tend to really truly work with the first person they physically meet. It's true. It just kind of happens that way. And so phone is, should be the last measure. Zoom, maybe a little bit better. The best is really to meet in person. Before the consultation, what I want you to do is to send them like a little welcome video by text. You know how we were talking the other day about you can record a little video and text it to them, or you can just email the video, or you can even email what you want to say if you're just not comfortable doing a video. Um, I want you to explain, okay, well, here's where we're booked, just a reminder that, of the consult time and everything. And I want you to give them a copy of the buyer booklet, which is basically the first time home buyer guide. It's the one that CAR, I believe, made available for us. I edited it for myself and I put a sample of it in the drive. I can also edit it to where it's just generic, like California Curb Appeal, if you want. And it's like one of those guides that just says, like, here's basically the home buying process. The reason I think it's a really good idea to send that to them early is because it's a whole bunch of reading and it's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't have to then say during the consult. You know what I mean? You can kind of quickly go over it during the consult, but you don't have to spend a bunch of time doing it all over again. You can let them read it at their leisure and, time whenever they have. Um, it's a good time also in that email or in that video to mention a review from a past client. If you have reviews from past clients, that's the time to throw that in there. That goes such a long way. It feels like bragging. I know from our point of view, it's like, oh, we don't want to say like this guy said I was so great, but that makes people feel so much more comfortable about the idea of choosing you when they see that somebody else did and then they had nothing but nice things to say about you after. It solidifies the concept that if they choose you, you're going to do a good job for them. So anytime in the beginning like that, you have an opportunity to show them that, even if it's just a link to it somewhere in the email. And then you want to prepare a folder for the buyer presentation. What would go in that folder? The buyer guide, if you haven't already emailed it to them, maybe they're older and they don't do email. Maybe they're like, we're not online people. Okay, cool. No problem. Bring them a copy then. Um, in there, I also put like house hunting tips, do's and don'ts. I have a sheet for that. I have a sample in the drive for you guys. I have my communication guarantee that says, here's everything I guarantee you. I'm gonna communicate often with you. Now, the sample communication guarantee that I put in the drive in there, it's actually for my listing appointment folder. So it's not for the buyer presentation. So it reads a little bit different because it reads like it's directed towards selling, not buying. So I have to make a different version for the buyer presentation, but you can get an idea from that sample. I put information in there of any preferred lender that I work with that I think is going to do a good job for them if they don't already have a specific lender that they're pre-approved with, or if they just want a second opinion. I put in there my winning offer plan for my 10-point winning offer plan. Basically, it's a sheet that says when I make an offer for you, on a property, here's the ways that I'm going to make sure that it's going to win. It's just kind of like a flyer, a little checklist, right? Um, I put in there a few of my business cards. I always give them at least 2 to 3 of my business cards. And I do that on purpose because they might want to give it to somebody else. And I always tell them, please, if you know of anybody else that I can help, give them my card. I put a few of them in there for you. I tell them that and I ask them that because they don't, they're not automatically going to recommend you or talk about you unless you ask. I know it seems like they will because they're so happy and everything, and that might happen, but I urge you every chance you can to like just kind of, slip that in there. You know what I mean? Um, I also have an open house pass, which is basically a little bit bigger. It's almost like the size of a postcard. I tried to find my sample of it, and for some reason I couldn't. So um, I will. I will find it and I will put it in the drive when I get a chance, so that you guys can see what it looks like. I have it in Canvas, so I'll find it in there. But it's basically about a postcard, and it says it's almost like a larger version of your business card. It essentially is. It says that I am representing you, right? I, the agent, Monica, am representing this buyer. And so when this buyer goes to open houses, they can give that to the other agent there and says, no, I'm being represented by this person. I know it's not necessary. A business card is the same thing. And that would be just fine too. You don't have to make that. I like to put that in there because I like to use it as a talking point to explain how it works when they go to an open house because I want them to understand clearly if they decide to work with me, I am representing them. It doesn't matter if they go to an open house by themselves, I am still representing them. It doesn't matter if they go to a new build. In fact, on that one, I go out of my way to say, don't go unless I'm with you because I probably won't
Right.
get it otherwise. Um, so it's for me, it's just an opportunity to like bring that up during the consult, which is why I stick it in the presentation folder. I put maybe some current market stats of any area that they specifically wanted to look at. And I put a copy of the contract, the buyer agreement in there with all the disclosures and a sample of the RPA. Why do I put a sample of the RPA? Because I want them to understand what's coming. I don't, I tell them, hey, read it when you're bored. You know what I mean? Just in case you wanted to see a copy. We don't need to go through it right now. But I do want them to like see it. I want them to understand, here's the things that you're going to have to decide when you go and buy a house. So it's not something I really get into during the presentation, but I put it in there as education for them, right? Information, make them feel like they're learning something. I'm giving them something that they wouldn't have seen otherwise. Um, and then I get into explaining a little bit about the home buying process, again, based on how much they already know. If they're seasoned buyers and they've done this a bunch of times before, I quickly just go through anything that they might have questions on. If they're brand new first time buyers, they're like, we have no idea what's going to happen. We're freaking out. So I go through it a little bit. Again, briefly. I don't get into too many details because you don't want to overwhelm them. If you give them too much, they're going to look at you and say, uh-huh, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, we get it. Yeah. When you ask them, do you understand? They're like, oh, yeah, yeah, we get it, we get it. They got 20% of what you just said. Just remember that. They're hearing you, they're understanding you, but they're maybe absorbing 20 to 30% of what you just told them. So this is why I say giving them things and planning to do it over and over in bits is almost better. Giving them things on paper, sending them things in an email after a meeting, regurgitating everything you just already said seems super redundant, but it's because people don't retain everything you tell them, no matter how much they want to. And even if they're curious and they want to learn, they're just never going to remember it all. It's easy for you to remember it because you already know it, but they don't. So be mindful of that. Give bits at a time, not too much. And this is an important one to remember. What they really want to know is what you can do for them that they can't do themselves because they already know they can go online and look up properties, right? Some of them might even feel comfortable enough to say that they know how to make an offer. They understand. They did it before. They bought a house once before. They understand what an offer is. They understand going and getting an inspection done. Like, what are you really going to do for me? That's that's where you show your worth. That's where you show them this is why it's important to work with a professional when you're doing something major like this, like buying property. And this is why it's important to work with me versus every single other agent out there that you may be talking to or considering, because there's a lot, right? And it seems like we're all doing the same thing. And a lot of people still to this day think we don't do anything except get you in the door and fill out a couple of forms and then we collect, 40 grand. And they're kind of pissed off about that. So you got to show them here's what you're really getting when you pay for a service like this, right? So here's some of the things that you can discuss when you're going over your value proposition. And you don't have to talk about all these things. I would say pick and choose the things that you feel are going to be most crucial and important to that person. What, based on what you already know, what's going to make them go, oh yeah, love that. Great. Sold. Where do I sign? Because thing you want to keep in mind is as you're going through this meeting, that's what you want to end up with. You want to end up with buyers that going, oh, I love everything you've just said. Where do I sign? I don't even care what it says on the, just show me where I sign. That's what you want at the end. And if you haven't reached that point, then you need to talk to them a little bit more. So when you're talking about your value, you can talk about how you can show them up to the minute searches, up to the minute data of what's on the MLS, right? Not just what they can see on Zillow or homes.com, because those websites are not always updated properly, but up to the minute information and what's really happening on the MLS and what's really available. That you network and prospect to find out where there's off-market properties and off-market deals, that you have connections to get off-market deals. Even if you haven't started doing that yet, tell them that anyway, because you should be doing that and you should go start doing that. And if you had a buyer right now that wanted a great deal and you weren't able to find it on the MLS, well, that's what you'll need to do anyway. So just tell them you're going to do that, right? You can talk about how you have access to for sale by owner properties and new build communities, information that they might not be aware of, information that they might have very little resources for. They might want to know more about new build communities. This is your opportunity to bring that up if you think it's going to hit home for them. You can talk about how you have, this 10-point plan for writing up really competitive offers, or that you know how to analyze sales data and appraisal information to make sure that the home that they are buying is priced properly and that they're not getting gouged or that they're not overpaying for anything, right? You can talk about how you will professionally negotiate for them on their behalf, not just on the price, but on credits the seller could give you, other concessions, concessions from the lender, discounts on services. It could go on and on and on, not to mention repairs, right? Do they know how to negotiate that? I don't know. That you have vetted lenders that you work with and connections for all kinds of financing to make sure that they get the best rates. Because even though they say, oh, I went online and I went onto Rocket Mortgage and they told me this is what I'm pre-approved for. Okay, great. That's fantastic. Would you like a second opinion? Because they're not always the best price, right? And when they find out that all of a sudden there's this other lender over here that can not only give them as good of a price as that guy, but also this other program that paid for their whole down payment or all their closing costs or whatever, all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, that guy didn't tell me about that. So, things like that can make a big difference in how the overall experience is for them. You can talk about how you and your lender can show them down payment programs and closing cost assistance programs that they might not be aware of. That you have connections with home insurance companies and you can help them review the quotes they get or the risk assessment there for what kind of insurance they might need depending on the property it is. That you have trusted inspectors on your list and you will always be there for every single inspection to make sure that it is done right, that they don't miss anything, right? That you can help them audit documents like title documents, escrow documents, the HOA documents, the settlement sheets. All of this paperwork is going to be super confusing to a lot of these folks, especially if they've never purchased a home before. And when they're going over it, they're thinking like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to look for. When we get HOA docs, it's usually, I mean, I think the biggest one I ever got was like somewhere around 1,300 pages. Yeah,
Oh my God.
because they had three associations in that community, a master and two underneath that. You know what I mean? And did I make them read through all that? Hell no. They're like, Monica, what do we look for? I'm like, I'll look for what you need. And I pulled out what I needed out of that and I showed it to them. Why? Because that's our job. Yeah. So this is the things you want to explain before. They're gonna experience it during, but you want to explain these things before because they don't really understand that that's what you're going to do for them. And also an important one I think is that you have connections with a lot of local trusted contractors and service companies that we all work with. So when you tell them you have connections with them, really it's we have connections with them, right? We as an office, as a group, because they're going to need people during the sale, maybe to inspect. They might need contractors to give them quotes on things. They might need somebody to look at a property and determine whether it's a good deal or not based on certain situations. And then even after they move in or while they're moving in, they might need help with somebody to clean up the place or to paint it, or maybe they need a gardener after, or maybe they need I don't know what they need, whatever they need. You can help them find it is the key point there. Um, the thing to always end with when you're talking about value propositions, regardless of which ones of these you decide to talk about, is that they don't have to do this alone. That you're going to be there every single day, holding their hand throughout the entire process. You and your team is going to be there for them. That's the thing that you really want to leave them with, that we got you, right? So when you're finished talking about value propositions and what you are giving them, right? What value you're bringing as an agent. Um, I want you to consider some things. There's some things that can come up, especially with new buyers, but not even always with just new buyers. It could be any of the buyers, that I would consider issues or problems, right? Them contacting you all hours, day and night, whatever, on the weekends, at 11:30 text. I've gotten those. I've gotten the ones at 4:30 in the morning too, because somebody's awake at that point, apparently. Um, or for example, they have really, really unrealistic expectations about what they can buy. They're like, I want this and this and this, and I want it for 150,000. And if you're like, maybe back in 1990, but not today. Sometimes they have unrealistic expectations. They might want to look at a lot of properties, but they never want to make an offer. That's really common. You go out over and over and over again, and there's always an issue, and there's always a reason why they don't want to make an offer. Or they want to always make such crazy lowball offers on every house that they absolutely love that it just becomes ridiculous because they're never going to get it with those kinds of offers. These are really common issues. And then some other ones could be like they say they want to buy, they say they're really serious, but then they just disappear. Sometimes for a little while, sometimes for a long while, and you have to feel like you have to chase them. Or they're asking about homes, and they're sending them to you, but then when you try to make an appointment, they're never available. Or a common one that I run across a lot is they don't tell you the whole story. And this is because they don't trust you yet. They might be withholding information or lying about certain circumstances. Usually this is around financing, but sometimes it's around their current living situation or timing or their job or who else is involved. Um, it's personal information that they feel for one reason or another they don't want to divulge yet. Or they're like I said, not disclosing other decision makers that are going to be involved. Even if they say, I'm the one that's putting my name on the paperwork, if at the end of the day it's him and his wife that are making the decision, you need to know that, right? You should know that. And sometimes they're not really telling you all of this. So these are some kind of common problems, and the solution is to set proper expectations up front and to pre-qualify them as thoroughly as possible. during this meeting, during this presentation. Like I said, you can do a little bit of pre-qualifying up front using that checklist, either by phone or through email or something like that. But you really want to go the distance and make sure you've hit all of these potential concern issues or concern points that could come up. So having them complete the buyer questionnaire before the actual buyer presentation would be ideal, or doing it with them over the phone or getting that information yourself. Explaining market conditions, explaining what the market is like right now. So they have realistic expectation that they're not going to go out there and find their dream home in 2 days. It's probably not going to happen. Or that when they're looking at properties, they're usually going to have to, um, you know, it's like you like the house and it has everything you want. It's the right price, or it's in the right location. There's like three things, right? You hardly ever get all three. I'll be honest with you. You have to give up a little bit somewhere. All of those are not going to be a 10 out of 10. It's like a unicorn if that happens, right? So explaining that to them and making them comfortable with the idea that, get that in your head, what you want, but then be willing to flex where you need to so that you can end up in a home that you will enjoy and that's good for you and what you need, right? And then pre-qualifying them a little bit more by asking about their expectations and asking them, what are you concerned about? What don't you understand? What worries you about this? Right? Ask those questions. I know it seems like, well, am I just opening up the door for them to like ask me some things that I don't know how to answer? Maybe, but you need to know what's in their head. And the more that you can get on that one-on-one level with them and make them feel comfortable telling you these things up front, the more they'll trust you to help them figure it out together, right? Because that's the feeling you want overall. We're a team, we're doing this together at the end. And then identifying what's most important to them. And when I say most important as in make or break, right? Like if the home doesn't have this, or if this situation occurs, then that's a hard no for me. There's no way I'm going there. Or it absolutely really needs to have this because this is very important to me in my life, right? I had one lady who said it had to face some northern facing sun situation. I don't even remember how she said it. And if the living room wasn't facing the sun in the right way, it was never going to happen. She put that right out there. And I'm like, okay, I got it. Not going to try to talk you out of that one. You have your morning routine. That's important to you. That's what you want. Okay, we got it. So it's always going to be something different with everybody. Some essential questions that you can ask to kind of get to some of these details. What's most important, obviously, during their home search? Does anything need to happen before they can buy? And by that, I mean, do they need to sell another house first? Do they need to get promoted at their job? Do they need some money to come in from something? Sometimes it's a timing thing, like they're going on vacation and they won't be able to start house hunting until this happens or that happens, or there's some other family thing or something happening in their lives and that you just don't know about. And if you don't ask, they won't really tell you. They'll just say, we want to start then, but you won't know why. Are there other people involved in the decision-making process? And what days and times are best for them to view homes? You really want to kind of set this stage now. These are the days when we're going to go looking. The other times we might talk, we might email, we might text, but these are the days and times when we're going to go look at houses. And that way, you know how you can schedule them best when you do find something available. Also establish their communication preference. Do they prefer calls? Do they prefer texts? Do they prefer emails? What do they want? And the hours, because you don't want to interrupt them when they're at work, or just be mindful of their schedules. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Once you get through a lot of this discussion, usually you'll get to a point where you feel like, okay, they understand what's going to happen next. They understand what you're going to give them. It's time to start talking buyer agreement, you know? And the way I like to do that is I like to explain, I like to kind of, you know, get in there real nice and smooth and just say, okay, so we're good. You guys understand, right? Okay, great. Well, now all we need to do is sign some paperwork and we can get started. Sounds good? Okay, good. Then you break out the buyer agreement and you go through it with them. Now, we do have another session later this afternoon where we're going to go through that. We're going to talk about how to get the buyer agreement signed and, you know, how to talk about you getting paid and all of that. So, right now, I just want you to know that there's a few key changes on the buyer agreement. They are up to a maximum of 3 months. You can extend that, right? After the 3 month period, you can say, we're extending it, we're renewing it, or we're extending it. But they can only be up to 3 months. They default to non-exclusive, but you have to check a little box that says they're exclusive. So what's the difference? Do you guys understand the difference? Who understands the difference between exclusive and non-exclusive buyer agreements? I can't see everybody on the screen right now.
Well, with exclusive, it means it all goes to you, where if not, anyone can, right?
Yeah.
Perform service, yeah.
So if they sign a non-exclusive agreement with you, they can also sign one with a bunch of other agents. And whichever one finds them a home is the one that's going to get paid, right? Ideally, you don't want that. Exclusive agreement means you are representing them exclusively, and no matter who they use to buy a home within the time period of your agreement, you are the one who's getting paid. They choose to go buy a home with somebody else because they made that decision, fine, but you are still getting your commission, right? Regardless of which one it is, I want you to always make sure that you make them feel comfortable with the idea that the buyer agreement is something that they are choosing to work with you. And if they decide tomorrow they hate you and they want to break up with you, they can. Right? Um, it's totally fine. We're going to work together and this is going to be great. But if for some reason this doesn't work out and you decide you want to change that, you can change it. That makes them always feel very comfortable about the process and they don't feel like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Right? There's a
How long,
lot.
oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I got to stop waiting, so just 2 or 3 more minutes.
Yeah, we're almost done actually. Yeah.
Okay,
There's a lot of disclosures now attached to that agreement. So again, when we go through this a little bit later, we'll go through all that. Um, when you are navigating the meeting, ask them about their future plans. Ask them, did you review the buyer guide that I sent you? Make sure that they understand what you've told them, right? I want you to kind of do that throughout. Does this make sense to you? Do you understand that? Ask them those kinds of questions. Explain anything that they don't understand, and discuss a little bit about how you find and show them properties. Explain how you're going to be emailing them or texting them, and they're going to look at them and tell you which ones they like, and then you're going to make appointments, right? Just so that they understand the process a little bit more and they can get a feel for how it's going to go. Um, this is the time to address their concerns and questions again, review anything that they have questions about. However, I would say stay away from reviewing or getting too much into details about the actual process once they find a home or the escrow process or any of that. I feel like it's too complicated early in this process for them to really even need to know that if they don't already. And it's just a lot of information. So stay away from that kind of stuff and review, like I said, anything that they absolutely want or avoid, right? Um, Important note here for first-time buyers, assume that you need to review everything, even if they said that they read the guide. And I truly do believe that because people don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to make themselves look like they didn't do something they were supposed to do. So they're like, "Did you look at it? Oh yeah, we got it. We understand." Really? Okay, so you understand this and this and this? You get that and that? You know what I mean? That's the time to just do that briefly to make sure, right? Um, and you can discuss your compensation. again, we'll go through this a little bit later in the afternoon. If they have any questions about that, you can talk about it then. This all happens before the agreement is signed. Ideally, at the end of the agreement, at the end of the meeting, you're going to have a signed agreement from them, and you're going to give them a copy, or say, I'm going to email you a copy when I get back to the office. I'll scan this and I'll email it to you, right? After the consultation, you want to create an email on your folder for this client. You want to create an email and put a folder on your computer for this client to have all the files for them in one place. You're gonna send, like, basically, it was great meeting you. Here's quickly what we went through, and here's what's gonna happen next. You're gonna give them a copy of the BRBC. You're gonna scan it and give them a copy, and you're gonna put it in your file, and you're gonna send it to the office. Anytime you have an agreement signed, the agreements are, remember, the agreements are between the client and California Curb Appeal. They're not actually between you and the client. They're between the office and the client. So anytime a contract is signed, the office needs to get a copy. So you need to send them one as well. And in this email, you want to set up your next action. What's going to happen next? Do they need to talk to the lender and get the pre-approval complete? Are we ready to start the home search? What is going to happen next? So you just kind of want to restate that, in the email within 12 to 24 hours at the longest, ideally within a few hours, right? Include a copy of their contract, set the stage for what happens next, and ask them, by the way, this is a good time again to ask them, since they just chose you, if you know anybody else that I can help, please let me know. And if they were referred by somebody else to you, go and thank that person immediately after you get them in contract. Let them know you're so happy, thank you so much, and give back. Your action plan for this week, I guess, will be to review all of the sample items that are in your drive, the questionnaire, what should go in your bio presentation folder, create like a little welcome video, even if it's just for practice, talk about your value propositions. Get that in your head. Which ones match with me and which ones can I talk about? And I want you to read an entire copy of the BRBC agreement. It's only like, what, 3 pages, 5 pages? I don't even know. You need to be completely familiar with that agreement. Same with the listing agreement. I'm not saying you got to do that with the RPA. That one's like, I don't know, what, 57 pages now? I'm kidding. It's like 17. But that one you need to know, because if you can't expect them to understand it without you being able to explain it. And sometimes they're just going to go, well, what does this say here? What does that mean? In big bold letters over here, what does that mean? If you're reading it for the first time when they ask you that question, that's going to look terrible. So you need to understand it and read it and know what it says there. Make notes if there's something you don't understand, and then bring it up, and we'll talk about it next time. Few last minute things, and then I'll end. Some common mistakes to avoid. Skipping this with what you would consider an easy client, right? It's my mom. She's going to love me forever no matter what. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. Not really pre-qualifying them thoroughly before the meeting. If you go in there blind and you don't understand anything about their situation, it's going to make it a lot harder to connect with them and show your value in the right way. Rushing through it just to get the agreement signed and not really explaining anything. A lot of times what you're going to get is, well, yeah, you know what? We're going to read this, and then we're going to think about it, and we'll call you tonight if we have any questions. That's what you're going to get. You're not going to get yeah, let's go. Give me a pen, right? So you rush through it too much, that's going to hurt you. And then don't forget to follow up. That one is key to solidify, hey, we're doing this together now, right? Which means I'm your best buddy. From now on, you're going to hear from me in the morning, and at night, I'm going to be the first and the last thing you think about, right? Until this thing happens, we are BFFs. So you have to like lock that in right after the signing happens. And some key takeaways are that every buyer deserves proper consultation, every single one. Prepare before the meeting. That's really crucial to help you feel more confident too during the meeting, not just to be prepared, but to feel more confident. And show your unique values. Not just, yeah, I can help you do this and this like every other agent, but what's unique about you? Why is it better with you? Um, and setting those expectations of how is this going to work so that you can avoid weird issues later that are going to come up. The buyer presentation is where you win. It's where you win the client. But you also set the foundation for a smooth transaction, and you set the foundation for future referrals, and you set the foundation for, I did a great job, and I can do an even better job with the next guy. And you get better at this every single time. And you're going to muck it up the first time. Trust me. It's never going to go smooth the first time. You're going to be like, oh my God, I should have said this. And I had no idea how to answer that. Cool. All right. That's fine. You know what I mean? You learn and you do it better next time. So don't stress out about it. Just try to get through the main things and make sure that you cover important stuff for the buyer. Um, did you guys have any questions? Does that all make sense? Because
Oh, great.
seemed like
That was
face
great.
hell.
It made sense. It was helpful.
What's that?
No, it made sense and the resources are helpful. So thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, the best thing you can do is to see these in person. So any chance you have to sit on a buyer consultation, please do that. If anybody has one coming up and they don't feel 100%, have Bobby go with you. Have your team lead go with you. Have somebody go with you. Just as a backup because we can jump in with stuff. And I've never seen a buyer go like, what? There's more than one of you? I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Nope. They're like, bring on the team. Oh, there's more than one of you? Fantastic. They don't care. They don't care. So don't ever feel weird about bringing someone in on a consult or a meeting or a listing appointment, buyer appointment, none of that. That's totally fine.
Thank you, Monica. Great job.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
sharing.
All right, so I just sent you all the links in case you want to jump in on the next one. The next one is with me and Scott. I've asked Scott to join in so he can answer any of the lender questions because we're going to be talking about the pre-approval process. So I'm going to go ahead and,
Are we ending this one and going on to the other one?
yeah, so I
Okay.
sent you the link so you can join us.
Okay, I'm gonna join you guys in just a little bit. I have a couple calls to make, but then I'll be there for the next session where we go over the BRBC. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.